What is your cryptid, ghost, paranormal story? Part 2. Please do like, share, and subscribe. So I went to college in a town with a giant cemetery with graves dating back to the very late 1700s, if I recall correctly. My friend lived in an apartment complex that was maybe a quarter-mile away, if that, from the cemetery. She would frequently send me Snapchats of weird shit going on in her house, like her dog staring into the open and dark closet growling. I witnessed that happening in person a few days later, but with the door closed, and the suspense felt when I was opening that closet was unnerving. Anyways, I remember we got together at her place one night to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with some beers and homemade fried food. The way her small apartment was set up was one where you could see into the kitchen from the living room like an open concept, or whatever they call it. I went in there to grab her a beer and myself some food, and as I closed the fridge, I see a glimpse of somebody walking down the hallway to her bedroom. No problem. I just start walking that way while saying, "Hey Aaron, here's your beer." All of a sudden I hear, where are you going?" She apparently had been on the couch the entire time and didn't move a muscle or see anything. It gives me the chills thinking about it. I definitely saw someone walk towards her back room. The story is not mine. It was told to me by my friend. When she was a child, she often went to the village. She had a friend and played with him all the time. My friend, along with the family of this boy, went swimming on the lake, had dinner with them, constantly hung out at their house, and did not want to leave. She even thought that she liked this boy. 3 years later, they sold the house. She never saw the boy, let's call him John, again. His family hasn't been in touch either. She recently talked to her mother about it, to which she replied that there was never any John. In the village, she only went to the lake with her family and most spent time at home. This might be a broken toy story, not sure. Either way, it terrified my entire family. When I was 4, my grandparents bought me a toy clown that cackled when you activated it. It made this horrible heh 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 sound. It scared me so much I cried knowing it was near me. My parents put it on the top shelf of my closet where I couldn't reach and took out the batteries. That fucking thing cackled off and on all night. We have a ghost that mostly misbehaves for my partner. The first time we encountered it, he shook me awake at 2 a.m., eyes wide with fear to tell me someone is in the house. I'm instantly awake, reaching for a weapon and asking what he heard. He shook his head and pointed out our bedroom door. The laundry light had just switched on. Now I was skeptical. Someone with the skill to break in without a noise, without alarming the dog, is somehow stupid enough to turn on a light? Maybe it was to bait us out, trick us into an ambush. We don't live in an overly dangerous place, but there is a meth problem. In any case, we knew we had to go find out. I try to ignore the gnawing anxiety in my gut and throw myself out of bed. We sweep the house until we reach the laundry. No one is broken in. The animals are peacefully sleeping. I look in the laundry, the light is on, but the switch is off. I frown, wonder if I just misremember the way the switch sits. I reach in and flick it back and forth. The light stays on. I figure maybe it's wiring. The house we rent has plenty of problems. This wouldn't be the first. Before I can say anything, I get a weird feeling. Then the temperature plummeted and the light blinked off. I'm too tired for this shit. I grew up in a haunted house. This isn't my first rodeo. I laugh about the house being haunted and go back to bed. My partner does not sleep. He, unlike me, did not grow up with a house that goes bump in the night. The ghost played with the light on and off. We got used to it, switching on and off around the same times of day. The ghost seemed to have a little routine, but it wasn't bothering us. One night, when I was out of town for work, my partner called me, again at 2 a.m. All the lights had turned on, and an overhead fan in the kitchen had turned itself on its highest setting. That was where it was difficult. The button on the range hood was pushed in. This was more than a wiring issue, and it was getting worse. If I was out of the ghost seemed to escalate. We started to notice the doors unlocking itself, things falling from stable places, things going missing and turning up days later. I unintentionally ended things one night I was home alone. I was sitting on the floor, scrubbing dirt from my sneakers, cursing myself for buying white ones, when it got cold and the laundry light started doing its thing. Now, I'm much less brave alone. If I'm protecting others, I'm full of BDE. Alone, absolute coward. The only way I can get courage is by getting mad. So I stood up, turned to the laundry, and in the best dad voice I could muster, shouted, "Oi! Are you paying the power bill? I'm not paying you for flicking my lights on and off. Cut that shit out right now." The light flicked out immediately. That's what I thought. You keep misbehaving and I'll evict your ass. You want to play with lights? You pay some goddamn rent. No problem since. Now, I tell anyone having spooky issues to be firm and channel your inner dad. As I explained to my stepmother, you can't let them push you around. You're the boss. Tell them to go to their room and stop running up the power bill. My father, a skeptic, nods sagely at my advice. Saw a ghost in Grandma's house. This happened about 2 or 3 years ago. I was in bed in the middle of the night. I woke up with a really bad feeling in the guts. I felt I was not safe. Tried to sleep, but it seemed like it was impossible. The room was pitch black, and suddenly it just lit up like if someone turned on the lights. A boy walked through the door about 10 or 12, blonde and real pale, was holding something. I could not comprehend what he was holding. It looked like a big piece of paper, but it emitted a lot of light. As soon as he got close, the bad feeling stopped. I never felt so much peace in my life, so I got out of bed and tried to touch him with my finger. He faded out instantly, and the room became dark again. After that, I laid in bed and slept like nothing happened. When I was a teen and lived with my dad only, I mastered listening for his footsteps at night because I was always watching TV when I was supposed to be sleeping. I became very good at hearing him come down the hall from far away. The bathroom was near my room. So good that with the TV on, I could hear him coming from many feet away. Turn off the TV and be back in bed before he ever got close to the bathroom or my room. When I turned 18, my dad died and I went back to clear things out of the house. I spent the night because there was lots to do. I lay down in bed for just a few seconds and I heard footsteps coming down the hall. Not just down the hall, but all the way from the living room. I was so sure that someone had broken in and was walking right up to my door that I grabbed a bat. I swung the door open knowing someone was standing right there and swung the bat with all my might. Nothing but air. More than a little freaked out, I checked the house room by room, every nook and cranny. Nothing. Not exactly paranormal, I don't know to be honest, but I saw ghosts of various types from a young age. Sometimes they were the stereotypical see-through people in old clothes. Other times they were vague, shadowy shapes. 1 or 2 times I saw what could be mistaken for an ordinary person, and at least once I saw something straight out of a horror movie about demons. I'm a skeptic, and it's easy to chalk a lot of this to pareidolia, seeing things, mental health issues, or whatever. Maybe it was, but there's been more than one occasion when other people have heard things or seen things around me as well. Seeing these apparitions only stopped after a mental break 3 years ago. I overdosed on some of my meds after a bad breakup with the manipulative ex, and I haven't seen anything since. Maybe it fixed something that was wrong in my brain, or maybe it's just because I moved to a different place. I know what's scarier, if that shit was genuinely all in my head, or if it was real and only stopped because I moved away. So we moved into an older house, not super old, but old enough to be a family home that people lived and died in. When we first moved in, we realized that in the basement there were locks on the outside of the door to keep someone in, not out. This is actually the second house we've lived in that had locks on the outside of rooms, so maybe it's more common than you'd think, but I don't know. Seems strange and creepy. So anyway, there were nights I'd be in the basement, sitting on the couch and feel someone touch my ear or whisper in my ear. Creeped me out greatly. I also used to sleep on my stomach. I would feel someone standing by my feet or over me to my left and freak out, and nobody would be there. So one time, I'm laying there dozing off when suddenly all the hair on the back of my neck stands up and I realize someone is in my room standing by my feet. This time, I know someone is there. Someone must have broken in through the garage. So I tense up and get ready to kick the intruder and spin around. Right when I start to kick, someone lays down on top of me, forcing me and my face into the mattress. I start screaming, but sound is barely coming. I'm thrashing and struggling, but they're too strong. I can't move. I can't scream. I'm convinced I'm going to die. Suddenly, all the weight lifts. I roll onto my back and nobody is there. It's just me alone in my room. That had me freaked out for a while. Happened 5 years ago. I was watching my little sister. I took a video to send to my mom since she was just starting to be able to walk. After I took the video, I looked it over and noticed that my sister looked like she was chasing something. When I looked closer, I noticed that wherever she looked, there was a white orb in front of her. When I saw this, I was honestly freaked out, but kinda cool. My family is a big believer in the paranormal, and when my mother and my stepfather came home, they were kinda freaked out too. For the whole of my childhood, my parents always spoke of a time when I, the oldest child, was a baby. They were in their room of our house, in which one full wall was a window which overlooked the garden. My parents were just watching TV one night, and it was probably about 10 p.m. Apparently, they heard a very clear knock on the window, which made them both jump. Now, you may think that this sound was probably just something falling on the glass or brushing against it, but my dad describes it as 5 loud knocks on the glass. This was confusing to them, since the security light, which would often light up because of a fox at the bottom of the garden or moths a meter or so away from it, hadn't been triggered. There is no way to get into the garden without passing the security light, other than climbing a brick wall that has bushes and trees all around the garden, which are all in clear view of the house. There's literally no way to get into the garden undetected. Anyway, my parents immediately looked out the window, but couldn't see anyone, so my dad goes into the garden to see if there's anyone in the garden, setting off the security light in the process. They never found anyone, and the CCTV footage showed that no one was in the garden at all until my dad went out. When I was 10 or 11, still sharing a room with my sister, we heard the same thing. Roughly 10 p.m., again, different house, same city. Our bedroom was upstairs, however there was a roof of a downstairs room which you could climb out onto from our fire safety window. Being like 8 and 10, we were too scared to look behind the curtain, especially since we both knew our parents' story. We both heard it, meaning 4 people in our family have witnessed the knocking. If I ever hear it again, you can bet that I'll be looking instantly. I have dreams. When I wake up, they feel different. Usually one specific moment sticks out. I can tell it's special. Then 3 to 6 months later, that moment will happen and it will hit me like a ton of bricks when it does. Used to happen a lot as a child, now very rare as an adult. When I was 11, I was sitting in my room with my dog with the door closed. I heard what sounded like my aunt call my name, which caused my dog to also perk up. Ran downstairs and asked if anyone called my name. My father was the only one in the house and said he thought my mother yelled for me. I go outside to the garage as my mom's walking in, and she said she swore she heard someone yell for her to come in the house. At 15, this happened again, but a different house. My dog was with my mom in the kitchen, and I was in my room with the door open. Swore I heard my mother call for me, so I get up and nearly run right into her in the hallway. Turns out she thought I had called her. I would always hear someone call my name from around 4 years old to around 20-ish years old. The first house we lived in had a guy pass away in the living from the heart attack. Things would fall from the shelf in the bathroom whenever we would take a shower in the house. My sister recently told me how she hated living there because she felt like she was being watched all the time. Since I was around 15 or 16, I've been getting random scratches. I played it off as itching myself in my sleep at first, but it always ended up happening whenever my mother was angry at my father or me. They would always be on my upper arms or chest area, never lower. My father gets them far less than I do and stopped mentioning them altogether about 6 years ago when my mother claimed my dog must have done the latest one when he didn't even sleep in my parents' room, since my father had just gotten up for the day. I've honestly tried to find ways to explain the scratches, but I don't have long nails, and there's nowhere near sharp enough to leave the marks that I get. For now, it has become a small amusement for my boyfriend and I to guess what exactly my mother is angry about when new scratches appear. Wouldn't surprise me if she has some sort of attachment with how much negativity she gives off. In the middle of the night a few years ago, I saw a figure pass in front of the glow of the alarm clock and into the darkness at the foot of our bed. I thought it was an intruder. I had awakened because I thought I heard our apartment door open and close and then saw the figure. At first I thought it was my husband, but when I inched my foot over to the side of the bed, I felt him next to me. My heart was pounding so hard I could hardly hear anything else. Till then, I had always thought it was silly when someone felt afraid that people can hear their heart pound. I get it now. So, after about a minute of staring into the blackness where the figure had disappeared, I grabbed the bedside lamp and threw it at the foot of the bed. I heard it crash into the wall, leapt out of bed, grabbed for the flashlight on the dresser, dropped it, made 2 huge steps to my left and turned on the bedroom light. No one there, just my husband staring at me like I had lost my mind and the lamp lying on the floor. I explained what happened. He made a sweep of the apartment. Even though the bedroom door was shut, the apartment door locked, and there was absolutely no way anyone could have entered without making every single floorboard in the old apartment creak to wake the dead. It was 3 a.m. or so on a Saturday, so we got up for some hot chalky and watched a few episodes of Frasier until we both were able to calm down. I've had sleep paralysis before, and this was nothing like that. Lucid dream? Maybe. Who knows? I used to love paranormal stories, especially ghost stories as a kid. I devoured books about real ghosts. Then I watched an episode of Sightings, Ghosts that changed my life. A ghost couple were haunting a family, and the mom confronted the male ghost and told him that he was not allowed to harass or frighten the kids. And the ghost stopped. It cemented in my mind that if you're afraid, the hauntings get worse the way a bully gets worse. But if you stand up to them, you can refuse consent and they stop. In my teens, I started seeing an orb, just one orb, but it was a black orb. It was literally darker than the shadows in my house at night. I mostly didn't have a problem with it, since it would always move away from me. I'd just wait till it moved on, then go on with whatever I was going. Then one night, I was laying in bed when I suddenly felt a blinding pain in my right eye. I felt like someone had punched me. There was no one in the room. I ran to the bathroom, turned on the light, and looked in the mirror. I looked normal, there was no bruising, but just touching the skin around my eye hurt, and it felt like there was a massive bruise on the soft tissue. Every time I blinked, it would send a fresh wave of pain through it. I went back to bed and lay down again. Then it felt like someone or something was poking me, jabbing at the bruised feeling with their finger. I rolled to the left. The poking feeling stopped for 2 seconds, then started up again. I rolled to the right, burying my bruised eye in the pillow. The poking stopped for 2 seconds, then started again. It was like something was reaching through the pillow just to cause me pain. I finally sat up, feeling royally pissed. I said out loud, "Stop it! You do not have permission to touch me. You do not have permission to hurt me. Get your effing hands off me." There was a pause, and then the poking sensation stopped. The pain in my right eye began to fade. I lay down again, and I fell back asleep. The next morning, my face and eye felt fine, and there was still no evidence that I was bruised or physically injured. A few nights later, I woke up to the silhouette of a tall man wearing a hat standing next to my bed. I researched later and found out it was a hat man shadow person. I don't know how I pulled it off without getting tangled in my blankets or anything, but I basically jumped to my feet, so I was standing on my bed and stood face to face with it. I couldn't see its face or eyes, but I swear we were face to face, and I just stared right the hell back at it and didn't back down. Then it disappeared. I got some sage and basically saged the whole house, every door, every window, then the actual room, cleansing it with the statement, "Negativity and malignancy are not welcome here. I seal this portal room against them." The house felt lighter afterwards. Then, I held the sage under my face and said, "Negativity and malignancy is not welcome. I shield my body against them," and took a huge breath of the sage smoke. It's weird, but though I get really bad allergies to smoke, if just about everything else, the sage smoke didn't trigger those allergies, and when I exhaled, I felt better too. I never saw the Orbs or the Hat Man again, and I was never hit in the eye again. Driving from Florida home to Illinois and heading into Georgia just after nightfall, there was someone walking across the highway. They were walking fast enough that we wouldn't have hit them, but I braced myself just as my spouse said, "What the hell?" because it stopped dead center in our path. They were so bright in the headlights, then transparent as we neared it, and when we drove through him, he dissipated around the car, and there was moisture on the windshield. All of this happened in a matter of seconds, and we were both sure we had just driven through some kind of wet ghost. Looked it up years later, and the only reference we could find was the part in To Kill a Mockingbird about hot steams, which is a southern superstition about purgatory. I'm sure there's some kind of scientific explanation for it, pockets of dense enough humidity in the hot south, but I can't find any of the references.